Chess Diagnostic.
Hello everybody and welcome to Chess Diagnostic. Today I'm going to cover a game that was played by Nakamura at the 2017 Gibraltar Chess Festival against a 2400, almost 2500 player. And the reason I'm covering this is because, well, I want to give an update. So I was supposed to post some endgame videos. I had 5 of them ready, but my computer crashed and I lost those videos, which is really frustrating. So I'm going to have to redo those. The reason I'm covering this game is because it has a rook ending, which my endgame series is going to go into rook endings next after an analysis of one complicated pawn ending. And I haven't really analyzed too many of Nakamura's games, but this game just blew me away because it covers everything that I've been talking about, the struggle, as well as just making basic threats. So let's see what happens here. It starts with e4, c5. Now Nakamura is black, and we get knight to f3, d6, d4, takes, and we get just a standard Sicilian. Knight to c3, knight to c6, and we get the kind of Richter-Rauser idea with queen to d2, bishop to e7, and opposite side castling. So with the opposite side castling of white, this signifies that black is going to castle kingside and there will be wing attacks on opposite sides. Now normally this will become a tactical slugfest, but we'll see what happens here. So of course h4, a very aggressive continuation, planning to just ram the h-pawn down and start an attack. Now I want to make a note here of Nakamura's perfect play in terms of his defense. In the Capablanca game I analyzed, he crushed a player in 20 moves because he didn't understand you shouldn't move your pawns when you're going to face an attack. Now Nakamura just completely ignores the h-file aggression, and with taking the knight, actually he deflects the queen into the center and away from the idea of an attack with his bishop. He develops his own queen. Now white is just, of course, solidifying that queenside king with king to b1, a very thematic idea. And with a6, of course, he's going to push the b pawn and get those queenside pieces active as quickly as possible. White returns to the ideal square, queen to d2, and it just opens ideas as well of that undefended queen. And Nakamura defends it, as well as preparing development of his bishop with b6. Another aggressive continuation, activating the rook, bishop to b7. Now, of course, solidifying that pawn, queen to c4 or queen to c5, just activating the queen a little more and preventing any ideas of discovery. So now we see h5. Now the middle game play here has been pretty standard, just trading basic aggressions on each side as well as trying to activate all your pieces. And actually white has an advantage here. Now, of course, that centers around the fact that his attack is a little quicker, but we can see how Nakamura neutralizes the aggression. He just ignores the pawn push, doesn't push any of his pawns, and just keeps with his own activity. Now, this isn't really what this video is about. It's about a rook ending, but I just wanted to make these points of how a top 10 grandmaster is playing. Attacks the queen, takes the pawn. Now, Nakamura is in no hurry to take that pawn back and open himself up to an attack, but he takes the center pawn, and we see a trade here. Kind of a liquefaction of all these pieces going into an endgame. He's in still no hurry to take that pawn, but he can take it while solidifying his own position. And now we can see that after these trades here, we go into the position at hand. Alright, so we're in a rook ending. Otherwise completely equal. The computer rates it as completely equal. And we'll see how Nakamura outplays his opponent in a rook endgame, which are known to be very difficult and complicated, but I want to make it very simple because when you analyze this play, it actually is very simple once you understand what he's doing. So white is, of course, going to try to activate his king, and Nakamura decides to activate his rook. So in rook endings, there's a key point of keeping your rook active. Now, what Nakamura does is combine simple threats, keeping his rook active, and slowly and methodically allowing white to make mistakes. So let's see what happens. Of course, he's preparing to meet rook to e2 check with rook to d2 and trading and going into an equal king and pawn ending. Now, what Nakamura does is maintain the tension. He's not going to trade rooks. He's going to slowly wear down white. So he's activated his king, and white has a slightly passive position. Of course, he can't move king to c5 yet because of this fork, so there's a lot of basic tactics you need to watch out for in these rook endings. Instead, he activates his rook even more, putting it on the 8th rank. Now he combines the activity of his rook with simple threats, chasing the king back, threatening the pawn, inducing weaknesses. Now he can activate his king, and he does some repetition to try to figure out a plan. He's in no hurry. You can see that black has a slight advantage because he's more active. White is playing a little passively, he's just trying to defend, and that's really the wrong strategy. In a rook ending, your main idea is to keep your rook as active as possible, even sometimes at the loss of pawns. Now, when you study, or when I go deeper into rook endings, you're going to study theoretical positions with maybe 1 or 2 pawns. But realistically, you're going to get a practical rook endgame with multiple pawns, and it's not so clear what to do. So the strategy that Nakamura follows is what should be done in almost every rook endgame. Making basic threats, keeping your rook active, keeping your king active, and just combining that with the induction of errors by your opponent. So you really can't win a rook endgame, especially an equal one, unless your opponent makes a mistake. And we'll see what happens here. So actually, this isn't the best move, but what Nakamura does is he allows his opponent to induce a mistake. Trades down some pawns, and then we see white cracking under the pressure with playing f4. A slight weakening move, and it allows black to get even more activity. So he just alternates basic threats on the pawns. So he's won a pawn at this point. Of course, he'll probably lose some because he has his own weak pawns. And now we can see that black is winning after the rook takes. So it's actually equal pawns at this point, but if we look at this position, the black king is just about ready to come in and attack these pawns, and he also has 2 pawns, which will result in an outside pass pawn. Now this pawn can be held up because black can get behind it, and as well as checking on the 7th rank, which will chase white's king back and possibly create a mating net with the king coming in. Alright, so we see the king attack that pawn, and now he chases it back, and we're still at equal pawns, but it's all about the position. So what has white accomplished? Because of, or what has black accomplished, sorry. Because of white's slight errors of moving this pawn, weakening his own pawns, as well as allowing black to basically get all the activity, now he's lost because this pawn can be ushered in very easily. And at this point, his opponent resigned because this pawn will get to the 8th rank quicker than white's pawn, and as well as black can just cut it off by getting behind it. So Nakamura played basically a perfect rook endgame, and we see how when you play against an opponent who's not going to make the perfect moves, how you can win. A very instructive example indeed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.